What is this? Interesting, man. All right, mic check 1 2 1 2. If anybody can hear me in the chat, please press one. Man, all right. Thank you all for the confirmation. Had some really strange technical difficulties that I had never seen before, so I had to do a little bit of research as to what was going on. We did get a community strike. Um, I'm not sure what was said or why they stipulated the strike, but that's something that we're gonna have to investigate. Um, it could be these hashtag people coming after us now. I know the manosphere has been under attack the last few hours from people flagging videos and whatnot. So that's something that we're gonna have to keep our eyes out for because um, I don't think we said anything that was incendiary enough to warrant our channel getting flagged. I think this is unacceptable. Hey, what's going on, Super Triz?
Hey, my bad. I had some background noise. I was trying to mute it before I came on the mic.
No, it's cool, fam. It's cool.
What's going on, Mike V? What's going on?
I'm chilling, man. Chilling, man. We had some technical difficulties, man.
I saw that.
It's crazy, man. Crazy.
Hey, you know why? I will tell you why. Because it was Ford because they knew that I was about to come on this mic and talk reckless about the Ford GT500. They already knew. I ain't playing no game. Listen, because I know Ty City gonna come up on here and act like I'm some type of fanboy, but I'm just keeping it 100. I call it straight down the middle. And I like Mustangs, but I'm about to go in on this Ford GT.
Okay. Okay. Let me pull up the links, man. And yeah, thank you all for joining us and being patient, man. We had some technical difficulties. Hit the like button if you can. Let everybody know that we're good now. Hoping that complex comes through. We can drop the link in the chat as well. Not sure what was going on, man. All right, just give me a second. Let me pull up these links real quick. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about this because we're already 45 minutes late, if not a whole hour late from what we originally were scheduled to start for. Shoot. Oh, here we go, right here. Okay. Oh, pop, right. Did I drop the link in the chat? Is that how you got on here, Paul Bryant? What's going on, bro?
Hey, what's going on, Mike? What's going on, Triz? Yeah, you dropped this link in the YouTube chat.
Okay. Yeah.
Rather unusual.
He said Ford had their boot on my neck. I don't know if it was Ford, man. I think it was these hashtag guys, man. They be up to no good around here, man. You say one little criticism, man, and they get the pitchforks and the tiki torches out, man.
Man, it's funny how, man, listen, if you think outside of the box, it's like, you know what, it's like they attack other people,
Well, don't
for
Paul, don't go into it now because they'll really bring our live stream down, man.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on.
How was your week?
It's been interesting so far. Yours?
Good, man. Good. Australia was amazing. First time visit. Loved it. Had a great time. Got to go back and made a little detour coming back. So I'm actually at my place in Germany right now. Just came in a few hours ago. So it's funny. So now I'm gonna go back to New York for a bit and then come back to Germany a bit later. So
you got some freaking flyer miles on you, man.
Bro, hey man, I'm just trying to live. I'm just trying to live the life that I wanted to live a long time ago, and just travel and enjoy everything. I mean, I always did, but as a full-time thing, just traveling.
All right, let's get into this, man. I think Complex will catch up with us. And if anybody wants to get on the panel, they can get on the panel. We're only gonna be on for about 90 minutes anyways. But hey, what's going on, Albert Bird? Yeah, hit the like button, man. I think there's only like one like in there. I'm the only one that gave it a like. So wanted to talk about the new Ford Mustang Shelby GT500 760 horsepower. Let me go through this real quick. The 2020 Mustang Shelby GT500 looks to be a serious performance car with a serious price tag. Ford's 760 horsepower Bullet will arrive with a starting price of $73,995, making it far more expensive than rivals like the Chevy Camaro ZL1 and Dodge Challenger Hellcat Red Eye. But the performance should easily live up to the price tag, with 0 to 60 taking just 3.5 seconds, and 0 to 100 and 0 in just 10.5 seconds. These are supercar performance numbers. Ford has already auctioned off the first GT500 VIN001 to benefit JDRF, a leading global charity that funds type 1 diabetes research for children. The first GT500 sold for $1.1 million, and now Ford will sell off another unique model to once again benefit JDRF. This one-of-one GT500 will come painted in a unique shade of Venom Metallic clear coat, which will be exclusive to this car. The dark gray hue will be matched with black racing stripes as seen above in the rendering, and the car will also be equipped with carbon fiber track package. This adds exposed carbon fiber wheels, Michelin Pilot Cup 2 tires, a rear seat delete, the Recaro seats, and a GT4 track wing. Ford didn't mention if the car will also have the handling package and technology package, but if all three packages are selected, the total value of the car will be $96,995 plus the added value of a one-off paint job. Oh man, this is something I know that we were just talking about this the other night, right? The Ford, the C8 for the most part, but in this regard, we were talking about the C8 versus versus the Ford GT rather than the Mustang GT500. So I don't know, man. What's your guys' thoughts on this?
Here's my issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to look at the car upon which the GT500 is based on. So we're looking at a base model Ford Mustang that's available either with the Ecotech. I believe they've discontinued the V6 model, but the Ecotech 4-cylinder base model turbocharged, which, you know, to keep things in perspective, even a base model is a respectable car. I think a lot of times we become disillusioned because in modern times we regularly see cars with outrageous, power outputs, and so we kind of, I guess, disregard the performance merits of even some of the base model cars. But the base model Mustang, and to that extent, the base model Camaro, these are respectable cars. They have great performance numbers, especially if you compare to some of the cars of yesteryear. These are good cars. But when we look at the actual base price of a base model Mustang, and we look at the actual price spread till we get to the fully optioned 96,000 plus GT500, because I believe the Venom paint is a $10,000 option, if I'm not mistaken. I had looked into the Mustang previously, and I think that is a $10,000 option. And then there's like a carbon fiber package that comes with carbon fiber wheels and stuff like that. That's like another $10,000. So we're talking about some very, very expensive options on the car that stickers MSRP for like 73,000 plus dollars MSRP. So we look at, how do we go from sub 30 to 90 plus for the same car? Like, that's just mind boggling to me. And I think Ford would have been better suited to have a car that cuts the difference. Like, you have the Ford GT, that's like a limited production run model that's like out of the stratosphere as far as the price continuum. So we don't really consider that in the grand scheme of things. But when we look at, uh, cars that are actually, achievable for, uh, I won't even say most Americans, but at least 20% of Americans can actually purchase, and I say purchase, responsibly purchase a C8 Corvette. So if you have a vehicle that's priced in that range, there's a separate and distinct model from the actual Mustang that stickers at, like, I think it's 27K, maybe even 26K for the Ecotech. Like, that's I think that would have been a better, because, well, anyways, you have the GT350, which I guess is kind of like the mid tier between the two. But again, it's still a Mustang. And I just cannot see myself, even though I believe they will be successful selling a Mustang, I just don't see the point of paying that much for a Mustang. And I'll get into some of the other gripes later, but I want to give Paul Bryant a chance to chime in on that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first off, I think it's looking real mean. I think it's looking real mean. So you made mention about the price between the base and this GT500. So first off and foremost, I am not a Ford fan. Ford stands for fixed or repaired daily, found on road dead. With all of that said, the ZR1
Come
fully
on.
optioned, if you ticked every box on the sheet, the Corvette, the C7 ZR1 rang you up at around $130,000. So the point that I'm trying to make is that's the top of the line version for the Corvette. So this is the top of the line version for the Mustang. So to compare this to a base C8, I'm thinking now is comparing apples to oranges. Let's see when the Z06, you got the Z06 comes out. Let's see when the ZR1 comes out. And now the rumors are there may even be a quote unquote Zora version. So all I'm saying is, let's see what the top of the line version of the new C8 Corvette will be before we compare this car to a base model Mustang. So we all know this car is probably a polar, is night and day, leaps head and shoulders beyond a base Mustang. This thing is coming with a track package and carbon fiber wheels, which personally I would never put carbon fiber wheels on a street car. The track, yes. The street, absolutely not. You hit one pothole and that's 10, 15 G's down the drain. But with all of that said, um, it looks mean. I'd like to wait to see what reviewers say when they take it out on the track and see what the car can do. This thing may end up being a track only garage queen. So if that's the case, which I personally suspect that this car will end up being that, who knows? It may actually end up being a good deal.
Mhm.
I guess first of all, peace to the chat. How you guys doing?
Good, bro. What's going on?
All right,
Hey,
all right.
bro, how are you?
Yeah. Well, despite Mr. Bryant's discouraging comments about American automotive, I happened to come in a meeting over here. And, I'll say this.
I like it though. I do. I like it. I
Yeah,
honestly do.
Paul. It's not
I,
German. I get it, man. If
no,
it was Fudge or Ford or something, you'd be all over it, dude. I get it.
bro, I like it. Honestly, this thing is mean. I have a lot to do. I like it. I honestly do.
I think my personal opinion is this, and I've had 3 Mustangs. I got one now. It's an older one. And my mom actually has the current generation of this body style Mustang. She actually has this. But I was gonna say, it's Mustang has always struck me as a value car, and even if you look at the origin of the roots in the history of that car, it was always a value car. Now, they always, they start in the later 60s, started to make more higher performance versions in the GT350s and 500s and Mach 1s and Boss 429s eventually showed up by the 70s. And that's great, but I think at this point, they may be starting to get a little far away from what kind of made the Mustang great. I know it's selling well, but I think when you have this type of budget, maybe it's time to introduce just a higher end sports car and start it at 70, 80, 90,000 and build from there instead of taking the base. And Super Triz kind of touched on this. Instead of taking basically the layout of a $20,000 or $25,000 car and just beefing that up and charging $100,000, I would rather them start from a clean sheet mid-engine like the C8 and do something that way. If you want to charge upwards of $100,000, the new GT40 Ford GT could have been based that way, and they would have had a solid competitor to the C8, man. But with the way this thing is, like, I like it. Of course, I like it. I'm a big Mustang fan. I'm an American Muscle fan, but it's too much money for a Mustang. That's just me. Like, I would never, despite my financial situation, I would never spend that much money on a Mustang or Camaro. I see those cars just as budget cars, and that's just what it is. I don't care what model or what motor or how quick they are. I've been fixing on that junk, them old IROCs and 5.0s and 4.6s the majority of my life. It's just a car to me. Go ahead. That's all I got.
Well, let me say this. The I think what you and Super Triz are referring to is the product cachet, right? So it's a Mustang. It started off at 25,000.
Based off of a platform of a $25,000 car.
Right. Well, and we've acknowledged this in the past on different channels, right?
Yeah.
But
that would be my gripe. But go ahead.
Right, and to introduce a new rear engined base car to compete with something like a C8 takes years and years and years of development.
Yeah.
Look how long it took.
The C8.
Honda,
Yeah.
Let me finish, bro.
Go ahead, bro.
Look how long it took Honda to come up with the NSX, and they went all the way back to Japan just to get some help. It takes a long time to develop a rear engine car. It's not easy. Even Lotus has a hard time with the the sale. I mean the volume that they make. They hand build all their cars. So this is not easy. It's not an easy arena to play in, and I foresee the next. And I understand what you're saying, that they need to slot something in between the Mustang and the Ford GT, and I don't know if they can actually come up with a easy compromise at this point. If they are working on something we don't know about it, then that's one thing. But to actually spin off a new product and hope that it doesn't turn into a dud, because a dud would actually kill the whole entire brand. Because the brand is the products within the brand are actually working just fine. GT sells. They've already sold out all of the GTs, and the Mustang, man, the Mustang demographic is always going to purchase a Mustang no matter what. So the question is, how do you come up with a new product in such a short amount of time? I was reading an article about the Hyundai Veloster, and it took them 24 months to come up with to go from sketch sheet to production on that, which they said it was one of the fastest things they've ever produced before, or one of the fastest cars in the industry ever to be produced. So let me rephrase that again. Not the fastest production vehicle, but the fastest turnaround time to go from sketch sheet. Yeah, but the people in the chat may not understand what I'm saying. To go from the sketch sheet to the production line was extremely fast. That's something that no one's ever done before. So to talk about going rear engine or coming up with a comparative product like to the C8 and the 911, that's a hill that I don't think Ford is ready to climb. It looks like they want to get out of cars anyways. They like they handing off a lot of that stuff to Volkswagen at this point, because of like German engineering, like Paul says. So
okay, let me know when you're done. I want to jump back.
I'm done.
Okay. My counter to what you just said, Mike, is this. Here's my counter to that. We've known about the mid-engine Corvette for years. They've been talking about the mid-engine Corvette before the C7 debut, because it was rumored in midlife of the C6 that the C7 would be rear engine. And it turned out, I guess, because of scheduling conflicts, that they weren't able to get it done in time. So it's pushed back to the C8. The C8 is not something Ford has been, and let's face it, Ford engineers and research team know way, and R&D know way about what GM is doing more than I do, and I even knew this. Mm-hmm. So they've known about this for years. They didn't find out about the mid-engine C8 like a year and a half ago, man. Like this is something they should have been working on for a while now, at least 5 years, at least. You
mean Ford?
Yeah, Ford. Yeah, Ford should have been working on this because they've been talking about. I've been hearing about a mid-engine vet for like probably upwards of 10 years, man. Because like I say, this was like middle of the C6 generation. Mm-hmm. People were already talking about it. Like, rumors were starting to fly in Car and Driver. And like anybody that really followed cars closely had been hearing about the Zoravette. But it was all kind of quiet, but a lot of rumors, a lot of stuff was going on about it. And, and after the C7 came out, it was assessed. it was kind of confirmed then. But even after that, and they said the next will definitely be mid-engine. That was like 3.5, 4 years ago. So I think for Ford to not want to do anything in that demographic, was kind of puzzling to me because they actually seem like they focused all the attention to the 500. I mean, to just the GT. But the thing is that's just basically a car for millionaires.
The GT.
Yeah. It's a $500,000 car. So I assume, and you said it's sold out. I assume all of the buyers are probably millionaires. It's
it's a race car though.
Yeah, it is. But I'm talking about the within grasp of the possibility of a regular working individual grasping that car. The GT is not on the menu for that. Is the point I'm making with that. But that would be what I had to say about that.
Well, I got a counterpoint to your counterpoint.
Go ahead.
Well, as we know, Chevrolet has been trying to develop, or actually, I won't say trying to develop, but they've dabbled with the development of a mid-engine Corvettes for quite some time. And we're not talking 10 years. We're talking like probably closer to like 30, 40 years.
Yeah. Since the 60s. Absolutely.
So in this development, they've never actually brought to production an actual model that they've sold to the masses. And so probably in Ford's defense, they probably thought that Chevrolet could not successfully bring a mid-engine Corvette successor or Corvette variant to the market and meet their price points. That's probably what Ford was thinking, like, okay, I know Chevrolet wants to transition to mid-engine, but they can't do it and make it make sense. So this was a shock to everybody when Chevrolet announced that the C8 would base for under $60,000. And then when they announced the official pricing that confirmed what they stated they would do, this was an absolute shock. People couldn't believe it. People still can't believe it. And so now Ford is looking like, okay, wait a minute. Not only did they actually bring the C8 to production, they're actually bringing it to production at a price point that undermines our Shelby GT500. And not just the Shelby GT500 now. If you inflation adjust the price and compare it to the price of the last GT500, they're not far off in price. The C8 now to compare to the GT500, the previous generation, and the generation before that. If you inflation adjust the prices. So now what we have is a supercar that's actually attainable. And so I think that's part of the reason why, and I know Paul Bryant doesn't like this comparison between C8 and Mustangs, but it's inevitable because of the price point, because they're both American car manufacturers, because they've had this long-standing rivalry, and because the Ford GT is so damn expensive that, actually, when you say millionaires buy this car, a lot of the buyers are actually billionaires.
Not necessarily.
I mean, some of them are, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you do have a lot of billionaires who buy cars, but they're not buying Fords for that matter. But, that's neither here nor there. I think because many YouTubers do have them. Shmee 150, who's been touring around California, he's been around at least 4 or 5 of them, and a lot of them are YouTubers. And these aren't billionaires. So,
but in all fairness, for like some of these YouTubers, the purchasing of their cars is part of the marketing for their channel. Like there's an actual reason why they can justify purchasing it. But just somebody, like if you take their actual net worths and say somebody else who's not in YouTube or not in some type of entertainment where they have to market themselves somehow, they're probably not going to spend that much money on a Ford GT. You're gonna have to have considerably more money to justify spending. First of all, somebody outside of YouTube continuum who owns the Ford GT probably has about 20 other cars.
Right.
Like you look statistics wise, they have like 20 other cars. So the Ford GT is like, okay, I need something different because I got everything else.
But these cars are usually race cars too. A lot of times they would be in Bahrain racing somewhere, or Monaco or somewhere like that racing. So they do serve their purpose. But I think the point that I'm trying to make here is that I don't think it's so much about comparing the Ford, comparing the GT500 to the C8, because in the article it says that it's comparable to the Camaro ZL1. So I think that was their target, right? The C8 falls in there just because the C8 is available, not so much that the C8 is actually has anything in common with it.
I agree with that, Mike. Yeah. I agree with that, Mike. It is. The Mustang has always been the natural competitor to the Camaro, and it would make sense for it to be the competitor to the ZL1. But I guess that's where my complaint will come in with Ford not having like that vet, or even when Chrysler had it around, that Viper rival. You know what I'm saying? So,
and that's coming back.
Yeah, and
what,
to
the Viper?
say, and in response to what Super Triz just said, anybody that followed like the vet forums and stuff that was in the know, like again, since like the middle of the C6 was kind of announced, man. I mean, the middle of the C6 generation, it's been like really, really heavy talk about a mid-engine vet, and a lot of like even ex-engineers and stuff kind of confirmed it, man. So it was kind of like a done deal. But where I agree with Super Triz is everybody was in the dark about the price though. Nobody knew for a fact it would be like that cheap. Like that car is so cheap, I could actually consider getting it when it comes out. You know.
Well, you know what? Can I counter your counter? I know we keep saying that under 60, but listen, that's marketing hype, because it's going to sticker for 59,000. So okay, 60.
Correct, sir.
But everyone is going to at least want that Z51 package, which is $5,000. So right off the bat, that's 65, not 60. With that said, now as far as concerns Ford GT, the Ford GT is a homologated race car. What does that mean exactly? It's a race car. They had to make at least 25 models that could be sold as a street legal road car. But that car was never designed from day one to be a out and out road car. It is a race car. The class that it runs in is a racing class within the WEC, the World Endurance Championship. So again, it's apples and oranges comparing anything that GM has compared to the Ford GT. So I can only guess, I can only suspect that Ford took Ford took a Ford took see Ford took a gamble. All right, we are going to invest our money in making a new GT because the last GT didn't do well, and Ford has a history going back to the 60s against Ferrari racing at Le Mans and racing in the other World Endurance Championship races. So basically, for GT, for GM, it was either we're going to put the money and make a new vet, which they did. For Ford, it's either they're going to make a new mid-engine car, which they never have, like GM did, or make a new GT. So they didn't have enough money to do either or. So it's either put hundreds of millions towards making one or making the other, but they can't do both. So with all of that said, I still don't think that you can compare the Ford GT to anything that GM has, being that vet. I hear your concerns and I understand what you're saying as far as the price points. It's expensive. Granted, it's an expensive. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, what I would say to that, Paul Bryant, is we shall see. I'm looking at the numbers on this C8 and what I've seen so far and what I've heard on the vet forums. I agree with you. Right now, I'm looking forward to what the C8 with the Z50 can do on the track, and I want to see how it compares, and then I'll come back and reassess. But for right now, I agree with you. But hey, man, I'm really impressed so far. But you got it, man. Go ahead.
Well, I kind of want to. I don't want to stay on the C8 too far because I know we're talking about the GT500, so I'm going to kind of transition back to the GT500 now. As far as Paul Bryant, me and Paul Bryant always gonna have this beef about this whole 4GT nonsense because yes, it is. It was designed to be a race car from the ground up. Yes, but
so was the C8.
I don't think.
I know. I'll leave it alone. Go ahead, brother.
But the C8 was designed to be more practical, obviously, a practical application, a street car, and they're going to have a race variant. So you're actually approaching things from the opposite direction. You go from a race car to a street variant with the 4GT. You go from a street car to a race variant with the C8 and the subsequent Z06 and the perhaps ZO or ZR1 or maybe ZOR, whatever they're going to call it. So therein lies the difference. But the only reason why I'm saying there's a comparison is that when you're talking about the performance variants of the C8, whichever is going to race competitively in the same venue as the 4GT, will the performance be up to par? So the C7, the C7R was a front engine. So what I'm saying is that the mid engine, now they probably got to iron some kinks out. So maybe like the first 2 years, maybe by the third year, we're going to see some pretty competitive lap times on the C8 or C8R. But at any rate, back to the GT500. When we talk about the GT500, one of my issues with the GT500 is that when you try to be a jack of all trades, you end up being a master of none. And so the marketing behind the GT500 is that it's a capable track car, blistering straight line performance, and then it has the practicality, of perhaps even having back seats. I'm not sure if it's going to come with the back seats or it's going to be like a seat delete option like it was in the GT350.
It's already deleted.
Oh, it's already deleted. Okay. So therein lies. Okay. So here's my thing. Now you've already deleted the rear seats. You have some carbon fiber elements in there to lighten up the car. But we're still looking at a car that's like almost 4,300 pounds.
Yeah.
Curb weight.
1,000 pounds.
So and then okay, now in all fairness, the base model Ford Mustang was already like 3,700 pounds. So for what you consider, because Ford was trying to market it as a sports car now, not just a pony car anymore. The globalization, now it's a sports car. 3,700 pounds is kind of heavy for a sports car, right? And so, anyways, now we got a 4,300 pound quote unquote track car. Now you take a 4,300 pound car to the track, that 4,300 pounds is gonna be hell on your tires. You're gonna be eating through tires because you gotta brake in the corners. So you're gonna be eating through tires. And hopefully you got I'm not sure if they have a carbon ceramic brake upgrade or if that comes standard.
It's Brembo, it's all we know.
So if there's standard brakes, right, and you're trying to brake a 4,300 pound car, hell on the brakes, hell on the tires. Like, is it really that good of a track car? Like, because those are considerations as well. So, like, if they wanted to make it a track car, they should have made it lighter. But it's like they're trying to do too much with one car.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Because you compare it to something like a GT3, just the base model GT3. Base model GT3s are around 3,300 pounds.
Yeah.
I know the Cayman GT4 is around 3,200 or something like that, 3,250 or something. Let me look it up now.
Yeah, it's pretty light. I agree, Mike. Yeah, I just want to say
it's 3,000 pounds at best.
Yeah,
that's I don't know, man. I don't know what Ford's really thinking about this, because this is not a trackable car at all. If it is, I'm not seeing the gains from it. BMW M4 is around 3,700. Let me do the Googles on that.
Which
Maybe
in my
maybe a
mind
race, maybe
is
like
heavy.
a race that's under 8 laps or less.
It's 30. So it's 3,400 pounds.
Oh, it's lost some weight.
Oh
Nice.
wait, no. That's yeah, 3,600 pounds to 4,100 pounds. I think the GTS or whatever they call it, or the CS, is around 3,600. So that's a really stripped down M4. But even at that, let me see, 9991. Okay, so
Wow.
yeah, look how light that is. I mean, a GT3 RS is 3,100 pounds.
And
Who
German
is?
cars are heavy.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
German cars are heavy because they have to survive high speed crashes on the autobahn. So they have extra steel, extra beams, and cross
But
bracing, thicker panels, and it's still light.
yeah, but it was always it was always heavy back in the 80s, right? 70s and 80s. They were built like tanks. But what I'm
Right.
saying in comparison to the Ford, like Super Triz is saying, going into apexes and things like that, that car is going to not just eat tires, but it's going to be sloppy.
Yeah, they're too heavy, man. The Hellcat and the GT500. It's too heavy, man. It's just a straight line muscle car. It's a muscle car. That's what it is.
Really?
Yeah, it's a muscle car, basically a super muscle car. But the vet has become, on paper at least, it seems to be a super car. So you can't really compare that, with like, with those two cars. It's just a different class of car. It gets back to what I was talking about earlier. But go ahead. I don't want to hog the floor.
No, it's fine. I'm just saying that the way they spec'd it out in the cost, man, it's something to be they had to have been looking at,
Yeah.
But Mike,
Go ahead.
we already talked about the Lex already went into the reason why. We already discussed the reason why. Lex, you said earlier, they started off with a base Mustang instead of redesigning or engineering a car, a separate and distinct model. Now, mind you, that would have been costly. You would have had to justify the cost by unit sales. Maybe it would have required a collaboration with another auto manufacturer to make sense in numbers wise. Or perhaps what they could have done is they could have took the engineering, have some trickle down effect, take the engineering that went into the Ford GT and replace some of that carbon fiber with maybe even some high strength aluminum, and then you don't want to cannibalize the Ford GT sales. You don't want to interfere with the Ford GT I guess value. So you would have to have some separate and distinct sheet metal. You would have to the car had to look totally different, but you could have used that as a base from an engineering standpoint, and then use and trade out some of those exotic materials for more affordable materials. Maybe even you could have used like some high strength aluminum.
Yeah.
Instead of having, I think the Ford GT has a titanium exhaust, have a stainless steel exhaust instead of titanium. And even still, with all that, the car should have still came under 3,600 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not. Yeah, but it's not that simple to just say, okay, I'm just gonna swap out carbon fiber for aluminum. It doesn't work that way. Once you move away from carbon fiber to metal, any metal, whether it's titanium, aluminum, or steel, you literally have a completely different vehicle with completely different dynamics. The R&D
Exactly.
and the engineering is completely different. So it's not as easy as saying, okay, we're just going to take ABC tech or XYZ tech from the Ford GT and make a new car, or transfer that and put it into the Mustang. Basically, they would have to help you. So basically, I'm somewhat making your point. Ford literally would have had to make a complete clean sheet design of a new car from the ground up. And I don't think it's as easy as just transferring some of the tech from the Ford GT into this new vehicle. If you're using carbon fiber, everything that's around that has to be designed and built to work with carbon fiber. If
That's how.
you know, Mike, yeah.
No, I was just gonna say that you're bringing up a good point. That's how they built the McLaren. They built it from the ground up with carbon fiber.
Right.
I think. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that the monoblock is this carbon fiber, and then the rest of it is aluminum, and it's bonded too. So what I think to Paul's point, Ford was probably at the crossroads. They probably didn't want to put any more money into the Mustang for what it was, and they didn't have probably the budget to actually spin up a new SKU to slot in between, like Lex was saying about in between the Mustang and the GT, because the GT's already sold. That car was sold when they designed it. People had already put their orders in.
Yeah.
So then you had nothing but the Mustang to fall back on, and then when you look at it, it's like maybe the only thing that really the car was designed for was for drifting. Maybe T-Pain was just waiting for his turn to be the brand ambassador. Like, yo, when y'all finish, man, yo, text me or something like that, DM me or something like that. I'll lock my braids up. But the thing is, man, I feel sorry for American brands because they always find themselves in a position where they're undesirable. This has been going on since what, the 70s, since the muscle car revolution back then, right? The car was fast in a straight line, but as soon as you need to go left or go right, man, that was it for it.
Yeah.
And the Germans walked right on in there. And then, listen, I won't even touch on that because I know Lex hates when I say that. But actually, listen, I'm gonna stay away.
Go ahead, man.
No, I'm not. But all right. So what I was gonna say is with carbon fiber. All right. Carbon fiber products, unless you're making airplane wings, they have to be made by hand, right? And even whether it's tools or monocoque chassis or airplane wings, they have to be baked inside an autoclave. So those things are expensive, and if you don't have one, then you have to rent one out, ship everything there, and have them baked in there. When it
And they're
comes to
starting to 3D
making,
print them.
yep. So when it comes to, yes, Mike, you're absolutely correct about that.
Mhm.
When it comes to aluminum products, aluminum, if it's pure aluminum, aluminum grade, they have to be made in a oxygen-free environment. Same with titanium. So the point that I'm trying to make here is the products are expensive. Okay, so that's probably the reason why Audi is pretty much the only manufacturer that makes all aluminum cars. And even it's really the A8. So I don't see how Ford could possibly take carbon fiber vehicles or aluminum chassis vehicles and aluminum component vehicles at a cheap price point.
Oh, we've already
Well,
seen that because Ford is already making aluminum components, a heavy use of aluminum in the F-150. That's how they were able to cut the weight so significantly in the F-150 was by the extensive use of high strength aluminum and just conventional aluminum as well. And to the point of actually using trickle down technology, it wouldn't be a 1-for-1 swap carbon fiber for aluminum. But what they could do is just use some of the engineering, so that way you're able to cut costs maybe by 40%. You can decrease your research and development by 40% by taking a lot of the concepts that you utilize in the Ford GT. The dimensions, the structure, and then just replace those components with aluminum, and then do the additional R&D. There's still going to be extensive R&D necessary to bring that car to production, but you can cut the production significantly by not necessarily designing a car from the ground up. Because remember, like, you're looking for a high performance car. Is not you're not looking for a replacement for the Ford GT, because obviously you're not using the exotic material, so it's not going to be a 1-for-1 replacement with the Ford GT. But you're looking for an actual viable alternative to the Corvette C8 and other cars that the C8 will be competing with. And you want it from the you want to be able to use the Ford nameplate. So I mean, you don't have to do the R&D by yourself. We've already seen the collaborations with other car manufacturers, Toyota and BMW, the most recent example. So there's ways to actually cut costs, but I just don't think the actual and I think they cut costs obviously with the Ford GT500 because they're using the pre-existing models and just basically retrofitting it with high performance parts. So I mean, there in itself is the actual cost savings on R&D right there. So I mean, I guess it's going to work either way, but I'm just dissatisfied with the spec sheet for the Ford GT500, especially when you factor in the price.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say I agree with you on that, and I think that again, Ford is either trying to play catch up or they found themselves like a deer in the headlights with the drop of the C8 and other brands like the what do you call it, the 911. It's hard to play in that market. So the only thing you can do is just throw up a whole bunch of steroids into it and call it a muscle car. That doesn't really, that's only going to work but for so long, man. They could have went to Lotus. Lotus did a pretty good job with the Evora. They did a pretty good job with that car, and they were able to squeeze a whole lot of performance out of that Toyota engine. So it only took them a couple of years to actually spin that whole entire product up. But then again, I know some of you guys have worked on, I think it was Lex, you worked for Ford, right?
Yeah, I work for a couple of different auto manufacturers.
Yeah, I mean, they actually can spin all this stuff up in computer modeling and know exactly what it's going to do before it even goes into production and whether or not it's viable to go into production for it.
I'll say this, and I'm an engineer, by trade. So, but I'll say this, man, I migrated to the IT side, but I had some experience with hybrid battery technology and powertrain and stuff. Mm-hmm. I'll say this, man, like likely that's a good point you made about them with Lotus and everything. I think what they could have done, they could have got something and wedged in between the Mustang and the Ford GT. They kind of got caught with their pants down with this Mustang, especially with the price that the C8 has debuted at. Mm-hmm. What they should have did was, to a degree, I agree a lot with what Super Triz was saying. They could have used the Ford GT as inspiration, looked at a lot of the design of it and how everything was put together, and then started using much cheaper components from clean sheet and saying, okay, how can we do this at this low scale of a price? How can we get how can we get a similar effect, at this low scale of a price and kind of build up from there? But go ahead.
No, I was just gonna make a point to the point that you just made, because I watched an interview with the head of Lotus, and they were talking about the revisions between the different Evoras, the first gen and the second gen, and they said they stripped the car down all the way down to the screws, to the smallest metric screw, and they said, okay, where can we cut costs? And they went through every single SKU of the car to find out where they can cut costs to make it more affordable on their behalf, so that they're not going into the red on building it, and still keep it light, right? So they actually saved a significant amount of money by outsourcing a whole lot of building material and whatnot for it. I guess there's some kind of
Yep.
I guess it's like an AC Delco or something like that out there in Europe or something like that, or China.
A lot of third parties, yeah.
Yeah, so they figured out a way to actually save money, man, and to make the car faster at the same time. By stripping it down. So and then looking at every single nook and cranny that they can find on it, it said, where do we save money? How do we go about doing it? So maybe Ford is just throwing everything they can at it while they can. I mean, the timing of the C8 and the GT in the GT series was like, well, you can't turn back now. You've already invested all your capital into this.
Yeah, it's too late. It's too late. They got caught with their pants down, basically.
Yeah, they should probably start wearing kilts if that's going to be the case.
Yeah, they it's just the C8 is just a major problem, man. That car's throwing a whole pipe wrench in the whole performance car game, period, man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I know Paul doesn't probably want to admit that and everything.
Well, because it hasn't been seen. I think Paul's point is that it hasn't been tested against the
top cars and stuff.
Well, not so much the top cars, but just it's against itself. I mean, based on the video we saw the other day of it going around the track, man, that did not look like something that was ready for the streets at all. Or maybe not ready for the track. Maybe it was ready for the streets, but not ready for the track.
Yeah. Okay, but hold on. I got a counterpoint to that, because we have to look at the actual the context of the video you saw. We're talking about a test vehicle at a test track. So the purpose of a test vehicle being at a test track is to test the limits of that particular vehicle's capabilities. So you don't want to drive within the confines of that vehicle's capabilities, because you don't know what the limits are. You want to know the point where that vehicle begins to oversteer.
It was the Nürburgring. It was the Nürburgring. So it was a Nürburgring. So it wasn't like it was an official test track. I mean, Nürburgring is basically the benchmark for whether or not your car is ready for production.
Well, I mean, but then that's not the final production model. So I mean, there's still obviously kinks to work out. Like a lot, like what you saw there. We already know kind of what the curb weight is going to be for that vehicle. So we know we know that whatever you saw in that on that test track, that can be resolved. All you have to do is look at, because a lot of times when you see that squirreliness, most of the time is due to suspension. Most of the time is due to suspension. So they have to make some adjustments to the suspension, perhaps even the electronic limited slip differential. Because I think they've already, and who knows, they could have been driving that car on an all-season tires that the base model comes with. Because remember, the base model doesn't even come with summer tires. The base model comes with all-season tires.
Bro, you are reaching beyond reaching. The Nürburgring is the hardest racetrack in the world. Cars are specifically developed and tested at the Nürburgring because if a car can handle on the hardest racetrack in the world, it can handle anywhere. Come on, bro. And again, all I said from day one, I'll wait and see. If the car does everything that GM claims it does on the track, and especially at the Nürburgring, then this will be, and you'll hear me say it here, this will be the next NSX, a car that will change the world if it does what they say it does. My attitude right now is simply wait and see. I'm not knocking it. I just want to wait and see.
Now, when we look at this, Mike V has pulled up the TVR, the new TVR Griffith, and I'm a big fan of TVR Griffith 500, TVR Saber, TVR Saber Speed 12, TVR Cigaris. I love TVRs. And TVR, they traditionally use a lot of inline six engines.
That's actually a Coyote engine they're using in this.
Oh, okay.
Coyote motor. Oh wow.
A Ford.
So there we go. Right. So right there,
a Ford
that
motor?
Is a way to cut costs. Okay. Because you don't have to research and develop an entirely new motor. You have a collaboration, and you source a motor from an existing car manufacturer that's tried and true. There's already an aftermarket for it. There's already performance parts available for it. So it makes it very easy as far as R&D. And look how they save weight. When you look at the exhaust system, right? You have the exhaust system right after the front wheels. Can you imagine how much weight that probably saves at least just by having the exhaust exit right there? That probably saves at least 40 to 50 pounds.
I think you're overstating that. I'd say more like 5 pounds, 10 tops.
No.
That's a lot of weight they're saving.
That's a lot of weight.
If they're shortening the distance that much, you're talking about a
Yes.
catalytic converter. The catalytic converter itself is heavy as crap.
40 pounds?
I don't.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. Let me tell you because
Okay.
I
could be wrong.
I had a Mustang GT like in 2013, right? And so I was having some issues. Basically, I got this fucking super expensive exhaust. I got an electronic cutout exhaust aftermarket. So that way I can open and close the exhaust by having a straight pipe, by having it routed through the mufflers. The engine I guess was heating up the solenoids on the actual electronic exhaust cutout, so they will get stuck open. So finally I took the car back to the shop and I was like, yo, these electronic exhaust cutouts, they keep getting stuck open. And so like, and it was like, okay, well let's fix it. I was like, well, I need my car back. Just take it off right now and I'll come back, another day when I found that they couldn't fix it. So they took the exhaust off. They weighed my mufflers. They weighed the whole exhaust system after the catalytic converter. Man, that exhaust was like 40 some pounds.
Yeah, I just saw the video with Shmee when he put his titanium exhaust on the Ford GT. He said he couldn't even lift the other one, the factory stock one, and he picked the titanium one up with 2 fingers.
And now, mind you, the Ford GT is a mid-engine car, so the exhaust plumbing is a lot smaller than a car that has the engine up front and the exhaust exit in the rear. So you talk about by having exhaust, just like that's what the Dodge Viper did too. The Dodge Viper had and just by having their exhaust just in front of the rear wheels, that's not even short as the TVR's exhaust. Just how by having exhaust in front of the rear wheels, they probably save about 15, 20 pounds.
Yeah, a lot of rednecks were burning their feet as they opened the door and had their flip flops on.
Mike, you won't call for that one, man.
Did you guys see that video where that guy had the Dodge Viper with one of the newer models? He's revving up at a gas station, shooting flames right by the pump. And I'm like, what kind of idiot is going to shoot flames from his exhaust? I'm talking about shooting big flames too, not no little bitty stuff.
American guys who love big, heavy, fat muscle cars.
Yeah, and they like eating
all right,
sandwiches.
All right, bro.
Yeah. I mean, I think TVR might hit the nail on the head from all the preliminary stuff I saw about that TVR. It's basically it's basically going to be a luxury Mustang for the most part.
How much does it weigh?
Oh, I think it's like 3,000 pounds or something like that, 3,200 pounds.
I mean, do you hear that? Now, and we're gonna look at the TVR Griffith price. The price is probably the same as the GT500. That's what the GT500 should have been. Mm-hmm. Instead of trying to add all this power, they could have just lightened the weight significantly. Because I guarantee you, look at that TVR performance. I don't know. I don't know if it will beat. It might even beat the GT500 around the track. I
don't know if it'll do that. It has less power too. It
has significantly less power. But you got to remember that the when you have all that weight, especially the weight is up front, it significantly changes the vehicle dynamics. You're gonna be wearing out the tires. Like if you have to go on a track like where you're gonna have to change tires because it's so many laps. That GT500 is going to be changing tires, more frequently than a car that's significantly lighter.
I don't know if the owners actually take those cars to the track as much as we would like to think. I see a lot of those guys just staying, going from stoplight to stoplight more than anything else. Especially with carbon fiber wheels and stuff like that. I don't think those guys are actually. I mean, obviously those are optioned out, but. Most of the Mustangs I see, man, just spend a lot of time just revving up at the lights, and then either get pulled over or they wrap themselves around a pole. But
Oh,
I want to go ahead.
well, I was gonna say, okay, well then, if that's the case, then would the carbon fiber wheels just be poser features? Because
No,
if you're not, if the car is not, going to be tracked,
mhm.
right, and then the weight savings for the actual, I mean, I don't know, I don't know what the weight savings is going to be. I would imagine to be very
It's
decent.
it's 40% lighter,
Oh
forty
yeah, and then
percent
plus,
lighter than Forge Alloy.
and then plus it's at the wheels, so that's significant when you kind of being at the wheels. But at any rate, though, if you're not going to track it, then what's the point? Like,
Well, I think at if you live in Florida or you live in Arizona or something like that where there's no snow, you don't have to worry about potholes. For all intents and purposes, you could run those wheels. I don't think you need to worry too much about potholes and all that much. And plus, you if you know the roads enough, you probably would take a risk and actually run those wheels. If you know all the dips and the potholes and whatnot, you can probably avoid most of the time. Um,
Yeah. I,
but
I
yeah,
oh yeah, no, I was gonna say, yeah, man, that would be a good fight, man. I bet you that TVR will put up a fight though.
I think the TVR is more of a street car rather
Yeah,
than a
you
track car.
know, a race car. Yeah, I would agree with that. But I bet you it will probably really impress on the track too. That lightness of it,
Mhm.
right suspension setup, etc. Um,
It looks pretty nose heavy though.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Would
no,
I
no, actually,
use
I don't. I think because of the actual layout, when you look at the actual layout of that car, uh, the actual passenger compartment is pushed back towards the rear, so you have a very, very long hood in comparison to the rest of the vehicle. That's because if you open up the hood of that car, that engine is way back by the firewall.
Oh
Actually,
yeah, it
part of the,
is.
huh?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's all the way back.
Yeah,
But
so it may be even considered a front mid
one
engine
mid
layout when you
engine?
look at the actual weight distribution.
probably similar to the AMG GT.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but you know what? I'm sorry. Yeah, Mike.
no, finish your statement, then we'll go to this article.
Yeah, weight is the number one enemy of performance. So the Bugatti Veyron, a few guys here and there would take the Veyron on a track and run it against other supercars, and the Veyron almost always would finish near near the bottom because yeah, 1,001 horsepower, 1,200 horsepower in the Super Sport, but the thing was almost 5,000 pounds. It was a pig.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's too heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found this in my feed the other day from Jalopnik. The average Challenger buyer is 51 years old somehow,
Mm.
younger than
Oh,
Mustang and Camaro buyers. So I thought this was a good article that we should read. It's a nice picture too.
pretty close to Paul's age, huh?
Oh, here we go, man.
Wow, shots.
I
I'm
know.
in my 40s.
Nah, yeah, I heard you say you were in your 40s. I was just really remarking on the fact that you be buying an American car. That was funny to me.
While some people may assume that a large percentage of muscle car buyers are Detroit retirees, Challenger brand manager Kevin Hellman is here to prove them wrong. In an interview with Muscle Cars and Trucks, he said that the median Challenger buyer is just 51. That makes them the youngest buyers in the segment, obviously. That's surprising for a few reasons. While 51 does sound like a relatively old age, it's actually below the average age of a new car buyer in general. According to the Federal Reserve, the average age of a new car buyer today is 53 years old. It may be easy to poke fun at the Challenger's old school image, but clearly it's actually got a younger set of customers than a normal car. It's also surprising to see that the Challenger buyers are younger than Camaro or Mustang customers. The Challenger is the most old school and comfiest one of its peers, arguably the only true muscle car left in the segment. Given that the new Mustang and Camaro both are smaller inside, offer turbocharged engines, and are stiffer than the Challenger, you'd be forgiven for assuming they cater to a younger audience than the Bodie Dodge. That being said, there are a lot of things about the Challenger that makes sense for younger buyers because of the low MSRP. Dodge's willingness to offer incentives, challenges are accessible to a lot of younger people. The Challenger is also comfortable enough to be used as a daily driver, which is important considering that young people are less likely to own multiple cars. The Mustang and the Camaro aren't too stiff to use, but they are certainly less compliant than the Dodge. Plus, you still get a big trunk in the rear back seat in a Challenger. That's important when it's your only car, but less so if you're an older buyer using it primarily on the weekends. Finally, the Challenger offers all-wheel drive. With all-wheel drive, a big trunk, lots of space, and comfy suspension, the Challenger is easy to use as your main form of transportation. That, or it's just looks cool. It just looks cool. So Challenger buyers, man, Detroit retirees,
Yeah.
Triple X.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, it's man around here, these parts where I'm at, it's just a sea of those cars. Tons of Challengers, tons of Mustangs, but the Challenger and the Charger right now, man, the 392s and the Hellcats are everywhere, everywhere. I see a lot of younger guys, but I see a lot of old people with them too. So I think, with a lot of older people, it's like, finally kind of getting that car they wanted when they were young. So, it's got the retro style going and everything. And I mean, I like the car, but it has the same issue that me and Super Triz discussed that I have with the Mustang, which it being a relatively cheap platform and the top model costing upwards of $100,000, like when the Demon was out last year. And, at that price point, it's still just a fast muscle car. It's not a supercar. So, my critiques of it. And then the interior of the Challenger is terrible too.
Is that for all Challengers or just the base model?
Yeah, all of them. It's the same interior. It's the same
No way,
interior.
it can't. No, because I think the Hellcat has embroidered headrests and stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say the seats are better, but with the exception of the seats, Mike, it's the same interior. Pretty much, it's the same interior. Like the dashboard is the same. The radio, I think, is like a slightly upgraded unit. I mean, you're looking at the same stuff. The seats are better though, but I mean, the car is $50,000 more. So, I would expect the seats to be better. It's a cool car though. It depends on what you value.
Well, the thing I like about the actual the Dodge Challenger, even though I've never owned one, never really considered purchasing one. Maybe sometime in the future in the used market, maybe it'd be like a little toy car. But what I like about the Challenger is that it has a timeless design. They really nailed the design on this vehicle because you can actually see that design, say 30 years from now, and it won't look dated.
Yeah.
The only problem with the car is that they release so many of them that, but in 30 years, there won't be as many on the road. People done wrecked all of them. And so it won't be that common of a sight. And so 30 years from now, it still has a very, very relevant, it's a time. It's almost like, say, for instance, the Jeep Wrangler, the Porsche 911, the Land Rover Defender, Galaden wagon, Mercedes. Like, you have certain vehicles, they come out with these timeless type designs that Land Cruiser, that 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, the car will still look decent. You won't look, you won't feel crazy driving it around. So that's what I like about that car. I also like the fact that the Scat Pack, which sources a 392 engine, you're still talking a $40,000 range. And I think that's your best bang for the buck for the Dodge Challenger. You get the Scat Pack. You don't spend any more than $44,000 fully optioned out, whatever options you want. Make sure that price comes in under $44,000. and I think you're at a good base price if you want to buy a new one. And then personally, I would buy a used one. But
Yeah.
if I bought a new one, I wouldn't spend any more than 44,000. 44,000, I'll get the 392 engine with leather seating surfaces, and you're good. And if you want to get, I don't know if you can get it without leather for the 392, which you potentially could probably save about $2,000 if it is possible. So I mean, that's where I will go with that. And I think from that perspective, it is a nice car. I understand why it would be appealing because, like Mike said, like Mike read from the article, it's a lot more practical, right? You have that practicality of that vehicle being spacious. You do have the all-wheel drive model, so which opens it a lot more for longer periods of driving in the northern states. Like there's certain months where like I don't care if it's all-wheel drive or not, because it's a car. You're not gonna be able to drive it in North Dakota or Minnesota, but at least you'll be able to get, maybe you'll be able to drive it, at least until maybe early November. Whereas the Mustang, you can't drive that after September. So in those states up north. So from that perspective, that it does have added practicality.
Yeah, it's a more. I agree with a lot of the things that Super Triz said. It's a slightly more practical car than the other two. The design is timeless. You could make a case and say perhaps it may be the best looking of the three. It depends on what your preference is, but it's a beautiful car, and when you see it, you know what it is. Like you know exactly what it is. Definitely.
Well, well, see, some of the issue that I have with Super Triz is saying is that that because of the inclement weather, that it wouldn't be usable in these areas. I would argue that if it has snowed that bad, then nobody else is driving either. Most of the time, it's a state of emergency at that point. Anything above 6 inches, at least up here, your car is not going to be on the road. That's just the nature of urban environments with snow.
Well, I mean,
a car like that probably would still get around as long as the streets are plowed.
Well, okay, so say for instance you bought an all-wheel drive model in an area that does get snow. Like even up here, we get snow in Seattle, right? So, like depending on where you live, if there's snow, right? If you have a Mustang, you can't drive it. Like even if they plow the streets, like if you live on a hill, like I live on a hill, like if you don't have a 4-wheel drive vehicle, when it snows, you're not getting up the hill. It's just that simple. And people have tried it, and I sit on my balcony. I just watch people get in accidents left and right. They can't do it. I mean, I haven't seen anybody with a 2-wheel drive get up this hill because it's too steep. And so, but there's a guy with a Celica GT4. He has an old Celica GT4, and when it snows, he makes his way down and up the hill. That 4-wheel drive is a big game changer. Especially if you got some good tires too. Forget about it. You good. Now now you talk about 6 inches of snow. I mean, a vehicle like that is not gonna have the ground clearance. If they haven't plowed. And then a lot of the areas where you want to get to, like if they may plow the main streets, but they're not gonna plow all up and down the residential areas. They may not get those areas, so you may be kind of snowed in. But if there's just light, what I would consider light snow, I think the all-wheel drive, and I think the all-wheel drive is only available in the SXT V6. I don't think you can get the V8 with all-wheel drive. But most people. Go ahead. What you gonna say?
No, I'll wait till you're done. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say most people buy the V6 anyway, but with the all-wheel drive model, I think that you just have like certain heavy snow is gonna shut everybody down with a car, but if you got like light snow, that may discourage some of the other drivers, at least because again, the part of the article, what they said is that the younger crowd that buys these cars, that's their only vehicle. Like they don't have a secondary vehicle to drive. And so go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just gonna say they do make snow chains. Thule and a couple of these other manufacturers do make snow chains that basically just wrap up on it in 30 seconds on those wheels, and you kind of ratchet it, lock it, and then it's ready to go. So, and I haven't seen anybody fail with snow chains. So I think that's always an option too, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do toss them inside of a cold weather package. But I do think that car is just extremely heavy, man. It's just an extremely heavy car. I mean, I think it weighs like 4,200 pounds.
Yeah, it's too heavy.
Yeah, it's too heavy.
4,200 pounds is heavy all of a sudden, but it's okay for the GT500, right?
Oh no, I wasn't saying that. I wasn't saying
that.
This car looks like the Chevy Camaro.
Oh,
it looks a lot like the Chevy Camaro. It really does.
Well, I mean, Detroit has always been involved in ancestral design, so.
Mike.
Oh, well, hold on.
Yeah,
I know you're not talking about Detroit being ancestral when we have the Porsche 911, which looks relatively the same for the past how many years? 40 years?
Wait, the same as what though? I mean,
it's not like
Audi. The Audi.
Exactly.
I don't think Audi has borrowed 911 designs or BMW has. I don't recall that. I mean, if you want to make that comparison between the Beetle, the Beetle Generation 1, you can probably make a case for that they were cousins. But
even still, that's Volkswagen, which was designed by Ferdinand Porsche. And when he left to make his own company, and fairly confident his son designed the 911. So it's Porsche, and Porsche designed the 911, and Porsche makes the 911. So I don't see where there's an ancestral relationship there.
Yeah, it only happens in Detroit. That's why you have a scat. That's why you have a scat pack. I mean, it sounds like somebody from Mansfield. It sounds like somebody. It sounds like somebody from the Manosphere was involved in that, but
that's the Obsidian pack, huh?
Oh yeah,
Ooh,
man. I don't get too far off topic, man. Man, that just got me.
American cars got to save money somehow by platform sharing, because they're not gonna do what Germans do and just lie, aka Dieselgate scandal.
Oh really?
Wow.
Well, I mean, the Challenger never really had any true Challenger to begin with. The size of the car it dwarfs that of the Mustang and the Camaro.
Yeah.
You can probably throw in what was the other car before it? The not the
Magnum Charger.
No, not the Roadrunner.
The GTX. You mean back in the 70s?
Yeah, the 70s. Yeah, in the 70s.
The Barracuda.
Yeah, the Barracuda. Yeah.
Yeah, the Cuda was smaller too.
Yeah. See, and that's the problem. American engineering seems to, think that using a sledgehammer, to put up drywall is the way to go, man. And the Germans have the Germans have figured it out, man. The Germans.
You know what though, Mike? You know what, Mike? I don't think that's fair, because we got to look at, we have two different markets, right? We got big, like Paul Bryant's in Germany right now. He'll tell you how, depending on where you're at, like if you're in Frankfurt, if you're in downtown Frankfurt, if you're in downtown Stuttgart, if you're in downtown Munich. I've never been to Berlin, so I don't know, but I'm pretty sure downtown Berlin is the same way. If you have a car that has 4 doors, good luck finding a place to park. And even if you got a small car.
So yeah, right. So Europe makes small. Europe is small people with small homes and small roads, so they have small cars. America has big, ugly, fat people, so they drive big, ugly, fat cars.
I will agree with that. So you have to have a car that can accommodate the generous proportions of the average American. Right?
But with that said, I don't understand why the R&D and besides the fact that the Germans are the best engineers in the world, but you can buy any of these cars, and a lot of Detroit muscle fanboys love to talk about the Hellcat and the Red Eye and everything else. So you have potentially a $75,000 car that can't stop, can't turn, cheap, hard materials, and interior that looks like the car costs $10,000. Body panels with poor fit and finish and squeaks and rattles. And so now compare that to any $70,000 German vehicle, and you have pure luxury with no
Yep.
squeaks and rattles, with much better materials. And listen, regardless of how any American person feels, Mercedes-Benz is the luxury benchmark of the world. So your vehicle, either you are above the benchmark or you are below that benchmark. And nothing that America produces is even at or above that benchmark.
Well, I mean, I don't think that. Well, obviously, Dodge is not marketing itself as a luxury car. Even Chrysler, nobody
Chrysler
considers
does.
Chrysler. Chrysler is a near luxury. Chrysler is in a league
It's a
with
premium.
Acura. Yeah, premium. There you go. It's in a league with Buick and Acura and all that kind of stuff. So we don't really consider that to be an actual luxury manufacturer, and its prices are reflective of that. Like
Well, Ralph Giles wants to turn that around, so I think there may be something to that. I mean, he talked about this several times, especially about the Range Rover. When he looks at the Grand Cherokee, and he looked at the Range Rover Sport. He's saying to himself, how do they sell a Range Rover for 120 grand, and we sell the same car for like 45 grand?
brand cachet. I mean, there's a brand cachet.
Yep.
A Range Rover has a long established history of being a luxury platform, just like the Mercedes. It's respected. You can't just like Hyundai is finding that out the hard way with Genesis.
Well,
Right.
Hyundai is
their
finding that out the
Genesis
hard
actually
way.
selling though. Their Genesis is actually selling.
Well, no, it's not. It's selling, but it's not selling in the volumes they thought it would.
Well, it's selling relative to their demographic. They've sold every single car that they've built. So I think that
but they've had to scale back the production, and then like some of the cars, like for instance, and then you look at the Genesis. The Genesis is selling. The big numbers are coming from their cheaper end models, but the people, what they found is that the people who are shopping for S-Class Benzes are not cross shopping the G90. Period. People who want an S-Class Benz, people who want an E-Class Mercedes are not going to buy the what is it, the G80 or what is it, G80 or G70. They're not I think it's G80. They're not cross shopping those vehicles.
Well, they're not supposed to cross shop them. The whole purpose of it is the person who wants a Benz or 7 Series at that price point and can't afford it will get the same exact car. I haven't seen any, whether it's Doug DeMero or any of these other guys who reviewed those cars, ever given a thumbs down. They've all pretty much said the same thing, that this is it's a competitor. I think where Genesis is now is where Lexus was in 1989.
No, I don't agree with you, Mike. Lexus was a car that people aspired to have. Like even within
not in the beginning.
You gotta look at, not at first. Not at first.
Not in the beginning.
Yeah, Mike is 100% on that money. Lexus, not in the beginning. No one knew what it was, and no one wanted them.
It was basically just a Toyota with a different badge. And if you look at the very ES250, that was a terrible car. Terrible Lexus. It was horrible, man. It wasn't until 1991 when they came out with the LS that was a game changer.
Oh, okay. So that's what I'm thinking about. You know what? My Lexus history don't go back before the LS, because that's the first thing I think of, because I know when the LS came out, people was talking about the LS like that was the car to have.
Because they did the champagne flute glass on the hood and they turned it on and it didn't even move. That was the game changer. Nobody was doing that back then.
Right, because they took a direct shot at the Germans, and honestly, they even made their Germans go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, and if you've seen the recent Genesis cars, even the new Kia and Hyundai Telluride and Palisade, Those are very, very much competitive to what the Germans, to what the Europeans are putting out.
Yeah, Telluride looks pretty good.
Look at all the features that it has. I mean, it's almost a computer on 4 wheels.
Which is not necessarily a good thing, because you know what? If the excuse me, if the BMW 7 Series is any indication, when you start putting too many computers into a vehicle, you start to get problems.
Well, the problem with a computer is that a computer is not meant to have the level of vibrations that a vehicle has. You know, like even like you know, we use computers extensively at my job. We have these ultrasound machines. Mm-hmm. And part of the problem with the ultrasound machine is that especially when you have the ultrasound turned on, and you're going through the hospital hallways and going up these bumps, going in and out of elevators, stuff like that, it jars up the computer, and that's why the computers go out on the ultrasound machine, because a computer is actually meant to be stationary. It's not meant to have to be turned on and driving around, bumping around, and jarring all the internal components and stuff like that. That's what causes a lot of the problem.
When I say computer on 4 wheels, what I'm saying is the amount of automated features that the car has is comparable to that of what Bentley is putting inside the GT. There's a lot of features that they dumped into that car. How they were able to do it, I have no idea at the price point that they're selling it at. But then again, Samsung, Korea, all of the engineering that they have down there makes a lot of sense. But for what they're selling it at, I mean, even Range Rover can't get their electronics right. I just saw a review with Matt Farah in the new Range Rover Sport, and that thing was falling apart already.
Yeah, waste the money. I agree, man. Waste the money.
But it's very comparable. It was very much comparable to the Land Rovers, and the X5s and the.
Okay, y'all talking. This is okay. Triple X. I want you to listen up to how I shut these niggas down right now. Mike V.
Wait. Why do you gotta call me that name? I am offended.
My bad. Mike V and Paul Bryant. When are y'all getting y'all a Hyundai, Kia, or Genesis vehicles? When? Give me a date.
I'm not.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm not saying.
Nothing y'all saying now.
I'm not saying that anybody should go out and go get one, but based on what they're doing, I'm saying that they are in the same position in 2019 that Lexus was in 1990, and it only took 1 or 2 years for Lexus to actually turn it around.
Man. Okay, Paul Bryant, your word, Paul Bryant.
Get him, Triz.
Crickets. Both of them are full of baloney.
The only thing that I can say.
And Paul Bryant are full of baloney. Period.
Allow me to answer. Allow me to answer, because the only thing I could possibly do would be to reword what Mike said. Right now, Kia is in the same position that Toyota was, or Lexus was, back in 89, 90. They had a new vehicle that the R&D was comparable, if not better, than what the Germans had then. But they had no brand cachet at all. And people didn't want them. They were not a hot commodity. As Mike said, when the first ES250 was literally a Toyota Camry, and they just put badges on it. When they came out with the second ES250, that changed the game. Then people started to look at the LS400. Then when they came out with the refresh for the LS400, and I want to say 94, 95, that's what really turned everything around. And then by the time they came out with the GS300, I want to say 96, game over. So all we're saying is right now, Kia is in that position that Lexus / Toyota was in 89, 90, 91. They're at that precipice to start to make major headways.
Yeah, and
So
they've copied a lot of they've copied a lot of the failings of Toyota back then, and what they and Acura too. I would say Acura too, because Acura is mostly an American brand, not really a Japanese brand.
Yeah,
But
Honda.
so
It's a name. That's it.
yeah, right. And what I'm saying here is that they are actually in a better position now than, let's say, Toyota was back then, because the first Lexuses didn't have leather seats. It was all cloth.
Yeah.
It was basically just a rebadged Camry. It wasn't really anything special about it.
Mhm.
Well, see, that's the see, and that's what my argument is. Because when you Mercedes is Mercedes everywhere. Now if you go to Germany, you can get base model Mercedes. I remember, like, when I was living in Germany, there was a time where you can get I want to say a 5 series. There was a time you get a 7 series with a manual transmission. You can't get that in the United States, right? And so you could get a Mercedes E-Class with cloth seats, because those were the models that they use as cabs. So they have base models that are not available. But even still, Mercedes in Germany is a respected manufacturer, whereas, like, say, for instance, Lexus doesn't exist in Japan. They have Toyota, and they have a Toyota. Like, Toyota has a different image because they can sell a Toyota Century, which is like the equivalent of, say, for instance, a Bentley. You know, and
Rolls Royce,
yeah. So and a Toyota Century would never sell like that here. Because people wouldn't
But
respect it.
but it's a different vehicle. So when you say Toyota Century, we know what it is. I don't know if anyone in the chat who's still on. That's literally that is a JDM car.
Yeah, and keep in mind that Mercedes has 100-year history. You're trying to break into a market, if you're Honda and Kia, one that's already crowded now. Before it wasn't so crowded, but until
Yeah, they
the 90s.
invented the automobile.
Okay, yeah. So what about Lincoln and Cadillac? These have long and storied histories, but they're not in the same league as Mercedes. Even at certain extent, BMW.
That goes back to what
I want to ask about
that goes back to what Paul Bryant has said, that their mentality as a Western brand forced them to not really look at the quality. They just sold the car for what it was based on the badge. I mean, they can only do that for so long, and which is why they kept European brands from coming in the first place, gave them such a hard time. They didn't want to have to compete.
And then, it really started in the 1970s because I'm pretty sure, I like to think that Mike knows, in the 70s, BMWs and Mercedes were literally cheap. They were cheap to buy. And it was all about American cars, American cars, American cars. But once American people got their hands on them and they saw what they were, they couldn't ship them to America fast enough, and the price went up and up and up and up because everything about the cars were better. The R&D, the fit and finish, the quality of the materials. So they were looking at. So basically, GM, Ford, and Chrysler were like, listen, you have to buy American because you are American and you live in America and support American jobs. Just buy American. Not, okay, we are making superior products that are as equal to, if not better than what the Germans are making. No. Strictly buy our products because we are American and you're American. And that's it. And people got tired of that. And then toward the late 70s, came the Japanese invasion. So by the time the mid 80s came, between 81 to 85, you saw an explosion in the prices of German cars. And then the Japanese, they occupied the lower affordable price market. And the US auto market saw a 25-year decline in auto sales. And in 1990, blasphemy happened. For the first time ever, a foreign car was the number one selling car in America, and that was the Gen 2 Honda Accord. Actually, Gen 3.
Yeah, Yeah, that was a game changer. And Americans didn't have a response to that. Maybe they had the
What?
Chevy. Maybe they had the Chevy Corsica or something like that.
What about the Pontiac 6000?
Well,
oh, come on. Come on, bro.
yeah, but that's I mean to Super Triz's point. Why didn't that translate over for Cadillac and Lincoln? Well, you know, Americans did not put any emphasis behind innovation in that way. I mean, yeah, you had Cadillac with the heads-up display inside the I forget which series that was, the STS or something like that, and no, not the STS. I think it was actually Chrysler with the New Yorker. I think that had a heads-up display. It's just a couple of digital numbers
Yeah.
on the window, but that was it. But that was the extent of innovation for them. I mean, they kind of borrowed that from Knight Rider.
Right,
Well,
exactly.
I mean, Buick and Cadillac had touch screens back. I remember I was a kid. My dad, because my dad is you can't tell him Cadillac isn't the hottest thing ever. You can't tell him that. But, I remember being a kid and he had this Cadillac. I think he had I know he had a Buick Riviera and I think he had a Cadillac, and they both had like these little touch screens that you can actually touch. It was like a black and white computer, but it was a touch screen. You get information about the car, mileage, and all that kind of stuff, nonsense. But at any rate, I think they did try a little bit of innovation, but they relied more on people like my dad, who swears, who like just believes in Cadillac, even to this day.
He drank the Kool-Aid.
He drank the Kool-Aid.
Bad engineering, bro. Bro, listen, I grew up, like I said, I'm in my mid-40s. So I grew up with these cars. That's what we didn't own these cars in my household. Okay, so my father was a GM man. May he rest in peace. My grandfather, may he rest in peace. So I grew up on the Buick Deuce and a quarter and 3 different Cadillacs. So when I say, dude, I know the mechanical problems that GMs have, and they never address those mechanical problems. So now you can look at whether it's the 70s, the 80s, or even in the 90s. You're looking at an American vehicle. It's a big, ugly slab with soft, wide Barca lounger seats with hard, cheap materials, panel gaps that are as wide as the Grand Canyon, squeaks and rattles, hard switchgear that makes loud noises. You go look at anything from Germany. They're sleek. They're more stylish. The styling is different. The styling is better. Much higher quality materials. Panel gaps that are as thin as a crease in a piece of paper. Softer switch gears that make much more pleasant sounds. And the ride is not like you're driving in a damn bouncy, floaty magic carpet ride. So, in every way possible, they were better cars. And you just cannot, if we're being intellectually honest, you cannot argue those points. Now, there have been a few gems from America. There absolutely have. But those few gems get lost in the tidal wave of typical American crap because everyone knows what you're going to get with an American car. So that's why I said I'm taking a wait and see attitude with the C8 because I'll honestly say this from a gearhead's perspective, I would like to see that GM finally cracked the puzzle and that they can finally build something that can run with the Germans and the Japanese at the European racetracks. If the car can do that, then they will change the world. And as a real gearhead, that's what I'd like to see. True R&D and technical innovation. And will the car have an interior on the same level as what the Germans and the Japanese give us?
I can say they had the C8 reveal at our local Chevy dealer, Les Stanford, a few days ago. I got a chance to sit in it. The interior is very nice. I will say this. I think you'll like it, Paul, when you get a chance to sit in one.
Yeah,
Cool.
but you say very nice. That's subjective. I mean, is it nice in
It's
comparison to
it.
like what the
I'm
Fiat 500, or is it like nice in
no,
comparison
Mike.
to like
It's
the
a
911?
comparison to the Beetle. It's
Oh,
Well, you have to
wow.
keep in mind. You have to keep in mind that the materials inside the Beetle are just borrowed from the Audi.
Hey,
It's almost one for one from the Audi TT.
it's really good. It's a really good interior. It may be the best American interior I set in. Now I know that ain't saying much to
Well,
you.
No, it's really not. It's really not.
I was impressed with the interior. Now you have to see for yourself, man. I already know Paul ain't gonna be easy to win over.
I will say this though. I will say this, and I've said it before. In my humble opinion, the current Lincoln Navigator is the hottest SUV on the market. Nothing is touching that.
Yeah,
Nothing.
I agree.
Ford hit a home run. Nothing is touching that. Nothing.
Yeah.
But with that, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I meant to bring that interior up to you too, because it is American and it is pretty amazing, isn't it?
Well, I think it's a shared platform with Land Rover too, if I remember correctly.
It's hot. It's hot. That is the hottest SUV on the market.
Well, I think they saved a lot of money by platform sharing the vehicle. So they were already 50% in done, right? So it was just a matter of the upholstery. They really nailed it on those vehicles. But then again, when they originally came out with it, they had nailed it. So it wasn't. You couldn't really expect anything less from them. You could say the same thing about the Escalade, but even the Escalade is pretty bad now too. It's all aged out and kind of stretched for what it's supposed to be. I think Lincoln has hit the nail on the head with this. But it's unfortunate that they couldn't figure out how to slot a Mustang in with the same exact interior and just relabel it as a Lincoln sports coupe.
I think
Go ahead, Triz.
I think what Cadillac is trying to do is they're trying to see if if Cadillac Escalade buyers will cross shop that XT6 because
Cadillac
the XT
Escalade buyers.
Yeah, they're trying to see if the Cadillac Escalade buyers will cross shop the new XT6 because the XT6, right? It's because basically their thing is that most Cadillac Escalade buyers, most of them don't tow, don't go off road. They don't really need a body on frame SUV. They'd be better served by an actual crossover that has better on-road manners, and better fuel economy. They'd be better served by something like an XT6. Now, whether they rather have the brand cachet associated with the Escalade, that remains to be seen. So maybe they're saying, because at some point they were talking about having the Escalade on a different platform, taking it off that actual Tahoe platform and having its own separate, more crossover-esque platform because they feel the demographic doesn't necessarily care.
Do you know who pioneered that idea?
You say what?
Do you know who pioneered that idea?
BMW.
BMW pioneered that idea with the X5 because everyone laughed at BMW when they said, "Why would you make a big SUV that's purposely designed to not go off road?" And they said, "Well, we looked at the studies, and over 90% of Americans never take their SUVs off the road. So why would we put the R&D into making a strict truck frame, which is what most SUVs are?" So then they made the BMW X5. So it's designed exactly what you just said, purpose built to not go off the road, and it has impeccable road manners and a much better ride. So it took the Germans to do better than what the Americans did. Damn, they can't get nothing right, the Americans.
Well, I think the Americans did not anticipate that the SUV market will blow up in the way that it has, and they invested so much into platform or bad sharing for that matter, not platform sharing, but bad sharing.
Yeah.
They they got caught up. They had about 7 different SUVs with the same exact chassis. We had the Pontiac Torrano, whatever Torrent or whatever it was, and then you had the Chevy Traverse or whatever it was.
Traverse.
Yeah, Traverse. Yeah, and then you had another Cadillac that was made off of that as well. It was just a disaster of different products with the same exact, just a different badge, and and they were crappy. They didn't last no more than a few years before they were falling apart. Interior leather seats splitting and stuff like that. Just I don't know. I don't know. Cutting corners really did not help any of the American brands except for Ford and Lincoln. I think Lincoln wanted to make sure that there was a distinction because even they got rid of Mercury. Remember, Mercury had shared the Mountaineer with the Explorer, and
I miss Mercury, man. That was my first car. So hey,
you missed Mercury.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, wait a minute. The early 70s, man. The early 70s, man. Come on, man. They had that Cougar Eliminator drop top with the 428 Cobra jet. Come on, man.
Oh man.
That was a beast.
What did you like? Did you like the the Contour, Ford Contour rebadge as well for Mercury?
With the rich Corinthian leather and piano windows.
That was the Mercury Mystique. The Mercury Mystique.
Yeah.
That was the conscious buyers product. I'm surprised it didn't come with
Mercury Stable. Remember the Mercury Stable?
Yeah, that was the conscious buyers, man. I'm surprised it didn't come with unks and libation in
But you know what though? I'm not gonna lie. Like, I always liked the Mercury Marauder. Now, mind you, the Mercury Marauder was a bit of a disappointment when you think about the fact that it came out after the Chevrolet SS, but the Chevrolet SS out accelerated it somehow. That's basically how that engine was tuned. It just doesn't have the low end power.
It didn't have low end torque. It was too small of a motor, basically. Yeah.
Especially for that big of a car. But
yeah,
I mean, I really like the Mercury Marauder. Or just something about it. I mean, it just it's like I mean, even like you look at the inside of it, it is when you sit inside of a Mercury Marauder, you know it's an American car. Mm-hmm. Very, very much a disappointment from that standpoint. But just something about it. That's like the only Mercury I really cared for was the Mercury Marauder.
Yeah. Well, let me address these comments in the chat from the Explorer L, EL. He says, salutations to the chat and panel. Off topic, slipped and I fell back in love with the original Acura NSX. I wish Honda would have evolutionized it instead of revolutionized it, even though I love the hybrid. See, Honda doesn't make a V8, and all of your supercars are already in that category, except with the exception of Porsche and the 911. They can get away with that because they can bring that sucker out pretty high in revs. But,
Skyline too. Skyline.
Well, I wouldn't throw the Skyline in that category, but because it's not rear engine.
Oh, but, Ford GT then. Ford GT is a 3.5 liter V6.
Yeah, but in that class, right? That class of the McLaren 570, the NSX, the new NSX, and the 911, and then the R8, right? That's the sort of party that they were going after, right? But
yeah, and then I think about the R8 and the Gallardo having available V10, so you got to really step it up a little bit,
Well, at one point the R8 came with a V8 too, right? So it's just one of those things. But a lot of people don't understand the hybrid aspect behind the NSX. They were going for the 918. That's what they were going after. And they actually did exactly what they were supposed to do at half the price. I don't even know if it's half the price of a 918. I think I think it's like 1/3 of the price.
Not even close, right? The 918 is like what, like $800,000 or something like that.
Yeah, it's like 1/3 of the price. So it's, you know, you have to think, you know, the NSX served its purpose. I think if people actually, you know, took some time to actually drive it, man, it's an experience.
But even the 918, it was a V8 hybrid, wasn't it? I believe the 918 had an 8-cylinder
I
engine.
want to say it's V6 hybrid.
No, I think it's an 8-cylinder.
Go ahead, look it up, Sutras. And then he says the 2019 Navi does not share its platform with Land Rover SUV. That's not what we were talking about. We were actually talking about the Aviator, if I remember correctly, too. Or is it the Nautilus? I think that's what they call it, Nautilus.
918 Spider, 4.6-liter V8.
Oh, okay. I stand corrected.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nautilus. So the Nautilus is what I'm referring to. DS4L. He says, ironically, the current BMW X5 is more off-road ready and capable than ever, while not sacrificing its on-road ability. No, it is not. You would not take that BMW X5 off-road. I mean, if you think that going to the mall and going over speed bumps and stuff like that is like off-road, then maybe you might have a case for yourself. Whoa, Nelly, this is pretty big.
It doesn't have enough ground clearance. It doesn't have skid plates.
Yeah, and
It doesn't have a low range transfer case.
Right.
It's not built for off-roading.
Yeah, I mean their idea.
They pretty much established that the only luxury vehicle capable of off-roading is the Range Rover.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's what
they've tested it. They've tested every model Range Rover that's come out, and they've confirmed that it's off-road capable. If all these other vehicles, they don't hold a torch to it, don't hold a candle to it.
Yeah, because well, you can throw in the Land Rover too. Not the Land Rover, the Land Cruiser. If you want to throw that in there, the LX, the Lexus LX series, right? I mean, it does have a lower transfer case.
True.
And the Toyota Hilux.
Yeah, the GX470, Lexus GX470 has the same. It's basically a Toyota 4Runner with a Lexus badge, but
with a V8.
Right. So I don't think we should put the BMW X5 in that category. I think Paul Bryant kind of touched on the point of the X5. I mean, but we could be wrong though. I mean, I guess if you consider like going up like a gravel driveway or something like that is going off.
speed bumps at Cars and Coffee.
Yeah.
Or you miss your exit.
Yeah.
So you got to go across those center lines and there's rocks and stuff.
The rumble strip.
Because you were texting while you were driving and fussing with the babysitter on the phone.
Bro, don't remind me. I did that one time and I missed my exit and I made a split second decision. I yanked the wheel over at 60 miles an hour. My left front tire clipped the curb. What I didn't see, that piece of the curb, it was going uphill. There was a metal apron there. I didn't realize until I got up at the top of the hill at the light and made my left turn. I cut my rim and the rim cut my tire. Boom. I'll never do that again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, he says the S4L says it has off-road, just not on Land Rover Cruiser level. I'll post a link to prove my point. I don't think you really need to post a link to prove your point because it doesn't have a lower transfer case. That's what we're discussing, right? The off-road capabilities. Where are you taking that X5 in the same realm as a Land Rover? Where are you going?
Part of and I think to a certain extent the Gladen wagon. Part of going off-road, you need that low transfer case because you have to be able to go up a grade where there's gravel. Like going on gravel is one thing, but going up a grade with like dirt, gravel, maybe snow, maybe mud, and you don't have a low transfer case, forget about it. It's not happening.
You know what? I'm sorry. I'll wait.
I mean, maybe he might come back and say, you know, the Acura MDX, you know, that's pretty off-road too, right?
Bro, listen, 2 or 3 inches of snow. I get that. Maybe a little dirt mound hill, but you know what? It's I don't know.
Well, it does have settings, right? It does have settings. It says like sand, mud, snow.
Yeah, but
I don't know what that really means. I mean, toggling those switches around doesn't really do much. It's kind of like back in the day when you had those old PC computers where they had the turbo button on the outside and you push it, maybe like 1 more megahertz of overclock, and it was like, oh, whoa, Nelly, this is really fast. Let me fasten my seatbelt on this thing. In 486, man. Tandy computers. But yeah, that's our point on the Explorer L. Most of these SUVs like the Cadillac Escalade, they're just over exaggerated for what they are, although they at one point they did ride like a limo. I think that's essentially what they were really meant to be, because everybody uses the Cadillac as a hearse, so it's not that far off in terms of engineering.
Funny you say that. If you look at the old Chevy, I want to say it's the K15 Blazer.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on the numbers, but that old big huge giant Blazer that came 2-door, and also came the four-door was like the
K5 Blazer.
Thank you. So the Suburban was like the four-door, like the four-door version, basically. Point is, those were serious off-road vehicles. So now your current Blazers and your current Chevy Tahoe, can they go off-road? Yes. Do they have skid plates? Yes. Do they have transfer cases? Yes. Would one of those modern vehicles have as much off-road capability as those dinosaur K5s? Absolutely not. Some, but it's night and day.
Mm-hmm.
Lincoln Nautilus. This is a new vehicle to me. I am unaware of this. This is the first time I'm seeing this.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, this kind of shares the same as the I want to say it's the Explorer. I could be wrong. Let me.
No, I think this is a platform smaller than the Explorer. I think the Explorer shares this with the Aviator. But when I look at that one, it kind of reminds me, if I squint my eyes, I see Audi A5. Not
And
A5.
what?
A5?
No,
the Q5.
Not A5. I'm sorry. What's the SUV Audi?
The Q5. The
Q5,
Q5, the Q7, and now they have the Q3. Well,
when I squint my eyes, I see like maybe 05 Q5 a little bit.
Okay.
So basically, it already looks kind of dated to me. Like when I compare it to the German equivalent, which would be the Q5, or maybe even the Q3 would be the equivalent. I'm not sure what you would compare it to, but I mean, it already looks dated from the outside. I'm not saying the inside doesn't. The outside looks dated.
Yeah, but that's been our point, man. That the Americans seem to just borrow from they parts been a whole lot of things, man. It's just kind of like disappointing when you get it and you see a lot of shared parts from different lower class vehicles, and it's like, nah, that's not the business, man. When you buy a G-Wagon, man, you know exactly what you get from AMG. Same thing with the Volkswagen. I'm okay with the Volkswagen and the Q8 and the Lamborghini sharing the platform, because you kind of know what you're getting out of it. You're not that far off from what your expectations were, but the stuff that Americans do is just not really acceptable on a global scale. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, the styling looks. I The styling is pleasing to my eyes. However, it does look conservative, and it looks a little derivative, and it looks somewhat dated. Now,
Yeah.
I'm well aware that auto manufacturers, everything now in this day and age is derivative to some extent. Look at look at look at the tail lights on an Audi.
Mhm.
I can name like 10 different manufacturers in America, Germany, and Japan that all have that same basic style where on the actual trunk lid itself, how those taillights have like kind of like a crystal elongated diamond sort of thing where they point, so there's like a slight variation. That's just one example. Everything in terms of automotive styling is derivative globally to some point. But the styling here, while pleasing, is derivative, and I kind of agree with Triz. It already looks dated.
Mhm. But then again, Triz drives a Forerunner, so
Oh, well,
um,
yeah.
he's always
Hey, a
88.
Forerunner. I have a 2000. It's a 2018 Forerunner Limited, which is extremely dated. But that's part of the reason why I bought my Forerunner, because it's there's a high resale value because they haven't updated
yeah,
it. So it still looks current, basically, compared to
yeah. Well,
Know what I'm seeing from this angle though, like that last motion angle. Yeah, look at that roof line. Look at that side profile. Doesn't that look a lot like a Range Rover Sport?
it's I was trying to figure that out. I heard of it before. I think Land Rover.
Now, my question is this: Does I want to say his name is
This is the one I
McCallum,
was.
David McCallum, or Christian McCallum, or Malcolm McCallum? He was the chief designer for Land Rover. Then he moved over to Ford just before Ford sold the company.
Yep.
Because if you look from the front end and profiles, there are several Ford vehicles that still look like Range Rovers, and especially Aston Martins.
Hmm. So I think I wanted to say it was shared with the Velar in the F
Mm,
Pace. I've heard of it before, but if you look at the like you said, the sloping roof,
mm,
that was a kind of a Ford joint venture before they sold them off.
right.
So it doesn't surprise me, especially the interior. The interior is always kind of a dead giveaway that they shared a whole lot. Um,
That side profile looks a lot like that Lincoln.
yeah, and if you look at the interior on that Lincoln, it kind of resembles the dashboard is all resembled it. So
Yeah, which which for me really begs the question: Who is doing Ford's interior design? Is it the same person who's doing interior design for Range and Jaguar?
I think at one point it was.
Yeah, I know that it was. That's a fact. But since Ford sold Aston, Range Rover, and Jaguar back in 2008, I mean that's 11 years now. I don't see how or why the styling still looks similar.
Well, it's not uncommon that they would hold on to a design, right? Right. They probably did one design and just kind of rubber stamped different brands onto it for the most part. It probably a template, right? It probably just use a template for the most part.
Excuse me.
But yeah, that was my first assumption that that's what this was. That's what the nav not the navigator the Lincoln was sharing the platform with. but I do like the Ford Explorer. I did have one of those on temporarily for a few weeks when my car was in the shop, and that thing drove like a car. It was actually pretty good. It got just as good gas mileage as my Volkswagen did. So
Nice.
even
Yeah,
though it was massively big.
A Ford Explorer. Yeah.
Yeah, that thing was massively big for me to be driving around. So I like my nimble vehicles, you know, like E30s and stuff like that. I like things like that. I'm not really a big fan of driving around a school bus.
Same. I like small, nimble, fast, maneuverable, and light.
Yeah, but yeah, thank you all for joining us, man. I know this was a rough start for us. Just hit the like button if you have not already done so, and share the video as possible. And we'll be back tomorrow, hopefully, if we don't get another community strike that we got.
Really?
Yeah, we got a strike already. So,
For why? Well, all right, never mind.
Yeah. Adios and shalom.
Travel safe.